Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Walaikum salam wa
Walaikum
rahmatullahi
assalam
wa
wa
barakatuh.
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you doing, my brothers? You well?
Alhamdulillah.
Good, bro.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, cool. Good stuff, inshallah. Let's crack on. Before we start, just want to mention just a couple of points. Firstly, guys, if there's any comments or any questions that come in, leave that to me to answer them and so on. And also, if you can just place it on mute until you want to say something, because that way it just removes any sort of background noise. So inshallah, let's sort of go straight into it. And as people know, normally we do the What's Happening Muslims weekly roundup on a Sunday and sometimes on a Monday. And normally we tend to leave it till Sunday so that, we can cover the events of the week. So it's sort of the last day of the week. The reason why we've sort of moved this on to a Friday is because of the recent attack that happened at the Kabul airport. And I want to really speak to you guys on this, whilst it's kind of fresh in your mind, also to sort of get your initial reactions. And I mean, it's been a day now, so you may have formulated some ideas yourself that you want to include in the discussion. So everyone probably knows exactly about what's happened. So yesterday there was an attack at the Kabul airport. As people know, there's loads of people there who are trying to flee Afghanistan, supposedly trying to flee from Taliban rule. And there was an attack, which, to be honest with you, I'm not even going to say it's surprising, because it was all over the internet even before the attack. It was said that there's going to be an attack. So I mean, the intelligence, whoever's intelligence it was sort of spot on. But anyway, so there was an attack, and up until now, the latest sort of death toll is 170. So it was a horrific incident. We also know that I think 12. The last time I heard, there's about 10. Probably has increased. 10 American Marine soldiers were also killed as well. So on the backdrop of this, I thought, there's no point delaying this session. If we need to have another one later on in the week, we can do. But I just really wanted to get your thoughts on what you think happened, because IS has sort of ISK, which is Islamic State of Khorasan. They've claimed responsibility. Just want to get your ideas on this and what your feelings are, what your inclinations, what your initial response was, and what's your thoughts on this? So what do you guys think? Anyone can go. You're all on mute at the moment. Yes, Mudassar.
I'm to be honest with you, I mean, the first thing that came to my mind when this attack happened was almost like trying to pressurize the Taliban government into doing what the Americans and others have been like demanding of them. So even just now recently, whilst you were talking, I was just browsing on the side, looking at Al Jazeera, and what's happened in the last 9 hours is the Taliban.
Are you using a headset?
Yes, I am. Yep.
All right, okay. I don't know. There's just a bit of interference, but carry on anyway. If you can't carry on.
Yep. So just literally in the last 10 hours, the Taliban has reached out to, according to Al Jazeera, the Turkish government to say, look, we need your support in trying to secure Kabul airport and providing security to that. And again, obviously, this is different to what Taliban's initial stance was in regards to the security of Kabul airport. And again, to me, what it does show, it pressurizes the Taliban government into reacting, as well as obviously conforming to what external powers want Taliban to be, not what Taliban was historically. And it also kind of like, forces Taliban's hand a little in saying that, look, you need to start thinking about having this inclusive government, which Taliban was kind of like, in my opinion, taking its time on. And again, the world's watching, not just the Americans and other super powers at play, but the Muslim world attentively, because one of the things they are gauging is, okay, are Taliban the same Taliban as previously? will they have Islam at the core of their government and governance, or will it be who is an American puppet? And that's the big debate that is currently taking place. And the other thing, if I was trying to be cynical, you could also kind of assume, this attack kind of does prevent any further people or opportunists that are looking to get out of Afghanistan.
Sure.
It prevents them from coming forward. And at the same time, it gives Americans and others an excuse to say, look, told you so. We were right to get out from on the surface of it, to calm the nerves of their own public, especially the soldiers that were partaking in Afghanistan, that sacrificed being away from their family, and some of them obviously lost their lives, and their families are coming out saying, okay, what was it worth? And again, America also needs to kind of address the public viewpoint and perception, because you have to recognize it. In the day, if America is going to a war again, will its own military and public trust its decision making, considering what it's done in Afghanistan, literally up and leave? And we know it's not just a case of overnight it decided to up and leave, and the following morning when he woke up, it decided to leave. It was a process that they had kind of initiated over the last 10 years.
Yeah,
and we know that when they were hosting the Taliban in Qatar, Doha.
Yeah. We spoke about this a couple of podcasts. It was some really interesting points, bro. So I mean, before I even sort of address any of these things, I'd like to hear from some of the other brothers as well. So anyone else want to share their thoughts, their views?
Yeah, I just want to add the attack in itself is highly questionable as well. I mean, it's clear hallmarks of intelligence agencies. The fact that the Western governments were saying 1 or 2 days ago is the attack imminent. If they had that much information that there's going to be an attack, surely they could stepped up security and even prevent it. And it's how convenient it is, while this global political event around the Kabul airport taking place, ISIS has suddenly decided to strike. So what we need to look at is who from this event, who will benefit and who will lose out. And it's definitely not in the favor of Taliban. And also what's interesting as well in regards to Turkey, the brother mentioned, Turkey, I mean, has been looking after the Kabul airport security for around about 6 years. Again, trying to show he has his own objective, but trying to show a willing member of NATO to still have his influence. However, recently it's pulled out from the airport, and recently Taliban and Erdogan had held a 3.5-hour telephone call, and during that, conclusion was there's still no decision made whether Turkey can continue with the security of the airport. And Erdogan was quite clear as well with the situation of the airport, that Turkey doesn't want to get sucked into the events that's taking place in Kabul, and has realized that America is trying to get them sucked in. So they were very wary of the plots that's taking place.
Okay. No, it's some good points. Amy, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to add that if you look at the context of America, its history in Afghanistan, when it supported the Mujahideen against the Soviet Union, they created this hysteria and this atmosphere of Islamic groups and jihadis and Mujahideen going into the area. So that area, Central Asia, was reported that it's like a hotbed. It's like an explosion about to take place. And one of the reasons why the Americans went in there, one of the reasons was so that they could tame the region. And these the Islamic organizations, the Islamists that they call them, that they want to tame them. But at the same time, Taliban wants an all-inclusive government with the secularists. Yeah, so America could go 2 ways on this. Is that one is that it cracks down on the groups in the region, but at the same time uses them against China and Russia, so to suck them in either into Afghanistan. So obviously because they want to disrupt their economic ambitions, or export these organizations into Russia and China to create instability in the region.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the points that are being made there, whether it's to do with Russia, China, and the other points that the brothers made, we've discussed some of these in the past couple of podcasts. But the thing is what we can see. I mean, I think Mudassar did make a good point. The fact that at the moment, what the world is saying is that we're not going to judge the Taliban from its words; we're going to judge it from its actions. And if we go to the Doha Agreement, this inclusive government, all these rules that are set out about no militants being using Afghan soil, and all of this plan that's been set for almost 10 years now. This is something which I think there is a lot of question mark in whether Taliban can actually go through with this. And there's a point you made in me that Taliban want to have an inclusive government. Taliban want to have an inclusive government with secularists. The thing is, what I would say is that, maybe it's not that they want this. Maybe it's the fact that they're pragmatic and this has been imposed on them, and this is their way of settling the issue, getting the Americans out, and then trying to move forward. Whatever their agenda is, whether they think that they can get rid of the Western forces and then do a U-turn. But the point is that I think what this does do, this attack, it does raise a few questions, and some of those questions are: does Taliban have the means, without being supported globally, to secure Afghanistan? And I think from what a lot of analysts I was reading is that it was a bit of an embarrassing episode for the Taliban, because it was actually the Taliban who were securing the outside perimeters of the airport. So in some I say, so I think that's one element where it doesn't look good on them. But we also know that the Americans are openly saying that we're working with Taliban to secure this area, to try to hunt these people down, because there was members of Taliban that died as well. So it's a bit of a weird situation, in the sense like these people were the ultimate demons and the most evil people, but all of a sudden now it just so seems that Taliban are Taliban, but there's far worse people out there who we need to be dealing with. And if it means that we can aid each other in the process, then we should be able to do this. There's a comment or something. Afi, do you want to make a point before I go to the comment, or you all right to play that?
Yeah, let's play it, and then I'll make my points.
Then I'll come to you then, yeah? All right, cool.
Hey everybody, how are you people? Yeah, really good topic. I want to say that if we compare to, I would just jump to the statement which I want to make on this issue. If we compare two takeovers, one takeover by Taliban when they won the war from United States and United States lost the war. If we compare that situation with the takeover of when United States won the war and they took over, it's huge difference. United States put people in Guantanamo Bay jail. They were tortured, raped, executed, and here this time if we see at the situation of the Kabul, it's pretty cool. Nobody's being killed. So if we compare two bad people, there are many people who say Taliban are bad, okay, if I agree, then if we compare two bads, America is worst.
Yeah, I mean, interesting point there. Afi, I'll let you address that and then make your point.
No, thank you for the comment, Moses. I think my point was going to be something linked to what you said, and I think if this attack is to show Taliban haven't got the power or the strength to contain or defend the country, I would challenge that notion, because for years they've been fighting what is self-declared as the mightiest nation on earth, and they've forced them into a situation of negotiation and to change its strategy. So the Taliban, have they got the ability to gun these people down and first, find them and deal with them? I'd argue that give it a damn good try.
Sure.
So I definitely agree with that point, despite whatever perception the media may be trying to give. I think when we evaluate a situation like this, I think it's a point that Muddy made. You look at the facts, and then you look at who ultimately benefits from this, and actually what happened before. And we know that America went into Afghanistan with a clear objective in mind, and linked, you can argue the economic goals, but we know that the ideological goals are there. Despite whichever administration comes in, those ideological goals do not change. And it is clear that they haven't changed. So despite whatever deal that they may have made with the Taliban, those goals haven't changed. And if we look at the Taliban, we know about the agreements that were made in Doha. We know the discussions that have taken place with individuals from the Taliban, with representatives from America. But what isn't clear is just that despite the Taliban taking a pragmatic approach to governance, ideologically, where do they lie? And I think that is probably the worry for the West, in the sense that how far does this pragmatism go? Are they merely going to implement, apply some spiritual rules of Islam, or are they going to go further and apply Islamic rules of governance, which is ultimately the worry? And what an attack like this does is twofold. It puts the pressure on Taliban, and you've got to look at where it was. It was, if it had been somewhere remote and they had taken, in some other province, then you could argue it's an isolated issue. We deal with it. This was done at an airport. It's an international airport. People coming and going. So therefore, it gives an international worry, especially we know the various diplomats who are coming and going in order to have these discussions with the Taliban. So again, the airport is significant. It highlights international travel. So it adds an international element to it. So therefore, it puts pressure then on anyone who's got an interest in Afghanistan to say, what, you need to protect. You need to protect us. We want to come in. We want to help you. We want to invest in the country, but we can't if it's not safe. And whether the Taliban's got the ability to defend it or not, it means other countries will demand certain assurances and will dictate certain assurances. And for America, that's a win-win situation, because we know that they've got proxy. America could be in there via indirect means, by using proxies, and having Turkey in there, or even Pakistan, who would also worry about if ISK are gaining prominence in Afghanistan, because it would ultimately have implications within its borders. So there's that element to it. But I think the other point that you made, for me, was the key one. It's really, really important that the discussion doesn't become who is better, ISIS or Taliban, because you've got to judge each one of these on their own merits. So the Taliban, whether they're good for Islam, not good for Islam, whether they're good for America or not good for America, time will tell. The actions will tell. Despite whatever their interests are, you judge it from your criteria and decide whether it's good for you or bad for you. And the same thing with ISIS. ISIS should be judged on its own merits or lack of merits. You carry out a bomb attack killing Muslims. What is where's the Islamic stance on that? It's very, very clear, and that's why there's question marks over ISIS's origin anyway. Because even the most ignorant of Muslims will know that clear cut. You do not kill Muslims, and you do not kill women and children, and in times of war. So this is known. Everyone knows this. So yet you're telling me someone who claims to be very, very religiously inclined and educated don't know this. So we should evaluate things like that in order to come to our opinion. But yeah, definitely for me, it's let's not be duped into having a discussion on who is better, which is the point I think you're trying to make, which is let that not be the discussion. If Taliban are good for the Muslims or good for Islam, the actions will tell, and we'll judge them by that criteria. Don't judge them by the level or standard ISIS is at.
Yeah. Can I just also kind of like just
Yeah, go for it,
comment
bro.
to some of the points like you made, Afi? One of the things that you kind of like said, which I see from a slightly different angle in regards to can Taliban run a country or not? I think they can't. I genuinely do believe Taliban can fight a war. They can fight battles, but in terms of governance and running a country, I don't believe they can or they are mature enough to do that. Hence why the objective around inclusivity is key thing for America to ensure that they put a structure in place that serves the objectives of them and what they are looking to achieve in Afghanistan. The other thing that we also need to recognize in terms of this attack on the airport, right, it makes Taliban look like the novices, right, in comparison to ISIS, right? It makes ISIS look like a terrorist organization. The same can't be said for Taliban in Afghanistan because the Taliban is from amongst the population, and the way they took swift, control and takeover of cities shows that, look, actually a terrorist organization can't do that. Only an organization that has support on the ground from the masses is able to walk into cities without a struggle and take over. And the other thing I also want to emphasize is sometimes people, when they look at the Taliban situation and what is America trying to achieve from Afghanistan, we also need to go back slightly and recognize that when America went in there in 2001, it was trying to use Afghanistan as a springboard, right? Bush's own words were, it's almost like a 2-week war, paraphrasing, right? We'll smoke them out. They wanted to use Afghanistan as a springboard to launch themselves in the Middle East to serve their objectives. Afghanistan never really was the objective for the Americans, right? And we know that because when 9/11 took place, they said, Al-Qaeda attacked it. Al-Qaeda was being housed by the Taliban, hence why we're going after Afghanistan, right? And the Taliban, right? And then what was their justification for going into Iraq shortly after? They couldn't find a justification because they couldn't link it back to 9/11, even though they tried to claim that Saddam was collaborating with Al-Qaeda, hence why we need to go after that. When that argument didn't stick, they then started to use, the argument of weapons of mass destruction, right? And again, we know about the famous dodgy dossier. So we can see clearly how quickly they wanted to get out of Afghanistan because it never really was the objective. But now the scheme and the situation of Asia and where Afghanistan lies has fundamentally changed, right? You've got China on the scene. You've also got Russia on the scene. You've got Pakistan on your right-hand side, and then it's got Iran on the left. So the dynamics have changed, and the minute Taliban, which will come into governance, right? There's always talk about inclusivity. Everyone's focus was towards Massoud, Ahmed Massoud, son of the former leader of the Northern Alliance. Everyone was thinking, there's going to be a civil war. Boom, this attack happened at the Kabul airport. Now the discussion's almost around, terrorist organizations, who's going to handle them, which almost starts to define what the role of Taliban is, i.e., you need to bring in an inclusive government, which includes the likes of former people like Karzai, Abdullah, question mark about Ghani and his puppets, as well as, Ahmed Massoud. And also, what is Taliban's role in relation to a terrorist organization, right? ISIS might be the bogeyman or might not be the bogeyman, but in the grand scheme of things, what are Taliban going to do in relation to anyone who claims, who has the label of a terrorist organization or carries extremist elements, right? So you can almost see, how their roles being starting to define on the international front and the way it's being publicized. When you have so much media focus on you, every single action that you undertake is under the spotlight. And the Taliban are under pressure. And it's almost like they're being forced to conform, which no doubtly they will be, right? If you play in collaboration with the devil, sooner or later you're going to fall prey to his whispers. And I think that's what's happening with these guys as well.
Yeah. Now, guys, Afi, I'll let you sort of come back on that one. But what I would say is, guys, feel free to just jump in when you want. Yeah, Afi, go on.
Yeah, no, thanks, Maj. I think I just want to clarify something here. When I said that Taliban's ability is greater than what we think, it was purely in relation to what's being touted as their inability to root out these terrorists. And I think they've got the support and the means to root them out, because these people will be there amongst them. They'll be living within Afghanistan. I agree with you that where the inexperience comes in is the governance, and it's the governance side, which is where America ultimately needs Taliban to be representing a certain way.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if the attack itself forces that unity government, but definitely the pressure from those countries that need a stable Afghanistan in order to fulfill their ambitions would force it down that way. And I think, in the meantime, we can't rule out that America may be working on individuals within the Taliban. As an organization as itself, they probably don't trust them. But we also know that the Taliban isn't as strong a unit in terms of thought and method as what they were under the likes of Mullah Omar. So there's probably already cracks there, and America needs to find ways to exploit it, but America can't be seen as the one doing it. I think Taliban would score a massive own goal if they were seen to succumb to American support, especially when they've just kicked them out.
Just to add, sorry,
Yeah.
Afi, did you finish?
That was the point I was going to make.
Okay. The thing I would say is that the inclusive government, that's not up for debate. That's gonna happen. I think if this event is anyway having any influence on that, I think it's what Mudassir was saying at the beginning, where it's a case of, well, okay, you need to sort of speed this process up. There's a lot of people out there who are doubting us because of the fact that we don't trust the Taliban, so you need to probably act in a different way. But just moving it to a different view as well, and I want to get your thoughts on this as well, guys. What I gauged also is that over the past few days, and especially with this attack, right, what is somehow showing is that the West, these armies, militaries of the UK, of Britain, and all these other European countries that have been there, right, that these guys are somehow the goodies, right? They're showing these pictures on the internet where you got an American soldier picking up a little baby and whatnot, right? And then also you got I can't remember the guy's name. There's a UK MP who's talking about, well, this is the terror that you're going to see when we leave these lands, right? And it's like, actually, wait a minute. If either people have, I think it's amnesia when you forget things, right? That the fact that they will somehow forget that, this terror that happened at the airport, this was a daily occurrence for almost 20 years of what these Western forces have put the people through. So we ain't gonna buy this nonsense that these guys are somehow now the goodies. They're there sacrificing and risking their life to take people away from Afghanistan. But in fact, we can't let people forget that their legacy in these lands is of an occupying force, and what they did in 20 years is, so much greater in the worst sense than what happened yesterday at the airport. Have you guys seen a whitewashing of this past 20 years over these last week or so?
Whitewashing has been happening for the last 20 years. I don't think the whitewashing is anything recent. Even if you look at Iraq as well, they do whitewash everything that they do until it becomes common knowledge or someone leaks something, in which case they issue a response of condemnation. I think there's definitely something going on, because if you look at the premise of just in the UK, the last elections and the whole Brexit, immigration was a massive issue. But people who are coming from Afghanistan with open arms.
That's what I was thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking, bro. Massive shift.
Massive shift. And at the same time, when they talk about involvement in foreign countries, there was when the budgets were being cut everywhere else, they were getting cussed for increasing foreign aid and what they were sending to other countries. So why is it that on this Afghan issue, these 2 points have become like non-issues, in the sense that it's as though they're trying to unite public opinion on them?
I think it also goes to show the mentality of the people residing in the West, that they can be easily influenced by the media, which goes to show that they're not really kind of independent thinkers. Whatever the media portrays, that's what they automatically believe in. Like all of a sudden, there's, like you're saying, there's a shift in, like all of a sudden there's this kind of concern about women and children, that women are going to get abused and tortured, or there's no education going to be happening.
Remember, Amy, not long ago, the immigrants were, I think they were called cockroaches, was it?
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah, that's right. And then all of a sudden now people are the masses are queuing up in gathering in the airport. They're trying to get out of Afghanistan. There's a concern for them at the moment. The other thing I want to mention is that, I don't know if you realize this, is that in the capitalism, obviously the criteria is benefit. The economy overrides everything, even if it's at the cost of their own civilians' lives. Yeah. So these people, in my opinion, I think, because obviously there's a shortage in the West of laborers. Yeah. So I'm sure the only reason why there's a concern for taking new refugees in is to get the skilled and unskilled people into their countries to manage the shortage of labor that exists in their countries, just to wedge that gap of labor. That's the only reason.
I wouldn't go as far as personally, I don't know the stats and stuff. So the labor thing sounds, like somewhat it's worth looking into. But something that did occur to me is that the people that they're letting through, unless you guys know, I'm sure the people they're letting through are people who are the qualified doctors, teachers, and they're not letting just the herders, the sheep herders and the cow herders, the average Joe. I'm sure they aren't. What do you guys think?
Yeah, there are reports saying the people that are going through are specialized skill set, such as, like you mentioned, the doctors, the engineers, and also where they do have shortages in labor force, right? And it's not every Tom, Dick, and Harry they are letting through. The other thing is, what's his name, in regards to allowing people. America and others are also trying to illustrate and demonstrate that they have a sense of gratitude towards those that supported and helped them. Hence, they have a moral obligation upon their shoulders. And it's almost like trying to show that humanitarian, side, the pleasant side, right? Exactly. Rather than just being labeled as occupiers that had complete disregard for the Afghani or the Muslim life in that country. The other thing that they are also trying to demonstrate is that they are no longer an occupying force. So therefore, the dynamics and the situation on how Afghanistan needs to move forward now is entirely in the hands of the Taliban. If Taliban fail, they will say, actually, do you know what? Here's another Muslim government that's failed because these guys were fighting us to say we are occupiers, we can't govern and rule them. Foreign, governance does not work. So let's see what they can bring to the table. So far, do you know what? They haven't got off to a good start other than taking a swift, takeover in cities, right? Obviously, there's the Kabul airport. They're stalling on, what does it mean to go to the IMF and liaise with the international community in an international world, etc. Yeah, so there's that pressure on them. At the same time, if now the Taliban, they've obviously invited Turkey back, if they start looking externally to bring, some of these other nations into Afghanistan, what does that mean? now these nations are going in there not as occupiers, but at the request of the Taliban, right? Which changes the dynamics. It
That's
will
a good
also
point.
allow, certain types of resources and people to go into Afghanistan without being targeted, right? But can work covertly and do what was necessary previously. Because before, anyone who was seen as a foreigner, whether they were sincere or insincere, they were almost like in target range, right? They were on the target hit list. Now, when they are going in there, it's almost going to be seen as, what? Yep, the international community is allowed. The scene has changed, and it also allows them to embed certain things that they want to do, whereas previously they were unable to do.
Yeah, no, sure. And it's a really good point that I think Imran and yourself made, the fact that they ain't going to do anything for free. It's purely for their own benefit. I mean, these are the same people who, you might have heard only recently, a couple of days ago, there was a report that came out, I think it was a WikiLeaks, that Sweden wanted to bomb Afghanistan to, sort of like enhance the marketability of their Gripen fighter jets. Then we have the fact that in places like Russia, where when they were being in Syria, for example, they came out themselves and said, we've tested 320 types of weapons in our operations in Syria. And Putin was saying, look, the experience that we gained through this real activity, you can't get that from these mock exercises. And also, for example, we know that the Americans, they dropped the MOAB, the mother of all bombs. And even then, if you think about it, this was, I think, the closest to a nuclear bomb. And even then, the analysts were saying that this was purely done for experiment, because this bomb itself cost $60 million, and I think they killed about 36 people, right? And what they were saying is that it doesn't work out, per person that you've killed on how much you've spent. So it's just a training ground, and it's stuff like this that people shouldn't fall for all this bravado. And I'm sure they're gonna make a movie on this. The score. Come on, Hollywood's gonna kick in, and there's gonna be a movie about this, how they escaped and probably took a baby with them and stuff like that, right? But the reality is far from that. The reality is the fact that for 20 years they've been prepared. They've been giving their militaries that hardcore experience in the most difficult trains in the world for their own benefit. They've used all sorts of weapons for their own benefit. So if for 20 years, and their ideology is one which only does things for its own benefit, are people really going to fall for this, PR exercise that, like Mudassar said, it's our moral obligation to help these people? Now, man, they're taking the best people out that they spent money training, right, to benefit them again. It all is about their benefit. So, I mean, I don't know, guys, if you guys want to add. Yeah, Rizzi, go on.
Yeah, I just like to add further. I mean, just for views as well, although the foreign troops are almost left, let's not forget America has also left behind over 18,000 defense contract workers. Along with that, going to go back to Kabul attack, just near the Kabul International Airport, we've got the Camp Integrity. That has been the home to Blackwater ever since 2009. So they've been well known. Their mercenaries always been operating there. And Taliban previous reports that identified over 2,000 trained personnel working undercover in Afghanistan. So we were likely to see far more so-called ISIS attacks within Afghanistan. And he achieved so many objectives, but linked with that, I just want to come back to the Doha Agreement, the part one of it, which states that the peace agreement, it guarantees and enforces mechanism that will prevent the use of the soil of Afghanistan by any group or individual against the security of the United States and its allies. So the fact that American troops are also killed in here as well, this further sets the scene for the future relationship between Afghanistan, Taliban, and America. So America will be leaving, but they will still be working closely with Taliban, the pragmatic new government within Afghanistan. So America is not left at all. They will still be indirectly working there.
Yeah, I mean, we know that even the over the horizon, project, if you can call it that, what Biden's been talking about is the fact that all of Afghanistan will be under watch from the sky, and to be honest with you, just you mentioned I think about that clause in the Doha Agreement. If America wanted to, they probably could have seen this. Obviously we know they don't, but this could have probably seen as a violation of the Doha Agreement, right? Because their personnel died, right, on Afghan soil. And if they wanted to, just as a side point, they could probably turn around and say, "Look, this is going against the Doha Agreement." But obviously, we know that they're not in it for that. They do want this new government to be set up, and then later on, we'll see issues of how it affects China and how it affects Russia. But I've heard a few people talk about a civil war and stuff like that. I personally don't think that's in the interest of what America's trying to do. But obviously time will tell about that. I think you want to make a point, or
it's just going to be on something Rizzi said regarding that clause in the Doha Agreement, and I think if I'm just interested in your view, really, Rizzi, that if you were America, despite that clause, would you be comfortable that Taliban would honor that going forward, or would you want to make sure actually we've agreed that, okay, that's our exit strategy to show that actually our interests are still taken care of. But with regards to implementation and adherence to that, they're going to take other measures and put other measures in place to make sure that that's what happens.
Rizzi, that's to you, mate.
Yeah, so if you look at, they talked about setting up mechanism to ensure that happen. Now, after this attack, there will be, whether it's command centers or joint ventures, like they already talked about how on the ground the American officers are working directly with Taliban to secure the parameters of the airport. They're working side to side, along with both are being carrying out joint patrol sessions. And the soldier was saying, "Look, we can't believe it. Like, we've been fighting these guys for ages. Now we both Taliban and us doing joint patrols." Again, all these are the mechanisms to ensure Taliban and America look after one another.
Do they though? Do they? I mean, sorry, I don't know if someone else was going to say something.
Yeah, just to jump in there. I mean, I think, look, America's not stupid. America's a world superpower, and it's been dealing with these kind of situations across the Muslim world, and it's created these situations across the Muslim world as well. So therefore, every agreement that it has in place, it has parameters in place, like Rizzi said, mechanisms, right? The other thing to also recognize is that America's a pragmatic country. It assesses the situation, and then it has enough agility baked into its plan to be able to adapt to the situation, and we've seen that. So, for example, out of chaos on the back of the Arab Spring in Egypt, in order to formulate a unity government, an inclusive government, and set up a new constitution, it drew out the Muslim Brotherhood, the Ikhwan, right? It brought him into power, set up a government, and the minute the structure was set, what did they do? When they weren't really playing ball, even though they almost had sacrificed what they originally stood for. It brought in, Sisi to take out Morsi. And you know what happened with Morsi, right? He died in prison. It did the same thing in Tunisia on the back of the Arab Spring there. It drew out the Islamists, right, under the guise of Ennahda. And look what Ennahda is today. Again, do you know what? The secularists are in power. It did the same thing in Palestine, right? Palestine never had legitimacy because there was two areas. So it drew out Hamas, said, you know what, stop operating behind the curtains, come out and show people the real face that you are working with us, right, the Israeli government, and what's his name, the Americans, right? Hamas was reluctant. So it made Hamas come in, win the elections, and then started to tighten the screws on Hamas, right? To the point where Hamas started to then operate according to American instructions. And then today you have the situation there as well, right? So I think they would use the same template in Afghanistan, if the Taliban don't cooperate and walk in the footsteps of what America has put, the footprints, America will tighten the screws, right? It can do any time. No country, especially a superpower, who's a seasoned professional operating in these kind of landscape, leaves behind so much military equipment intact without destroying it. Because the first rule of military is when they evacuate or leaves a country or something, that they destroy their equipment, right? So you can see, right, how they've been planning to make the Taliban a success. So they have this inclusive structure, and at the same time, they'll have the required guardrails, right, in place and the parameters to obviously keep them in check. And if they don't, they'll remove them.
Some really good points there.
To be honest, America's never been threatened by Taliban. In fact, even in 2009, the American surge, that was all geared towards picking all the individuals within the Taliban movement, all the hardliners who'd be an obstacle, and they assassinated them. And even the likes of Mullah Baradar, it was America's the one who ordered ISI Pakistan to release him, and they've been grooming him for years via the ISI. So Taliban is not a threat at all to America, and has never been, and America's far more happy to keep them in power as a non-ideological movement. And all the threat of whether they will play double role with America or anything like that, America's, for the last 13 years, already worked ahead and eliminated all them possibilities. So hence America is very confident with what they're going to achieve.
So yeah. Rick, just on that, Rizzi, if you think if they have, eliminated all those possibilities, why have the events have just taken place? Why would an attack like that take place via foreign? It's got the hallmarks of a foreign involvement in any way, and the intelligence agencies. I just think that with the Taliban, you're right. And even with what's happened with the Hamas in Palestine, they take out the old guard. You eliminate as much of the risk as possible, and then you're hoping that there's going to be a pragmatic approach. But with Hamas, there's the political side may have, but there's a lot of people who were aligned to Hamas who rejected the stance that they were taking, and start getting. And stay true to the original cause. I would liken what's happening in Afghanistan to what they did in Ireland with the IRA. I think the IRA were representative of that Republican movement, and it was clear they were. And over time it was decades. It was over time that they marginalized the resistance in favor of this new Sinn Féin type movement, which claimed to represent the Republican movement.
No, you're absolutely right, because the thing is, the only way you're going to transform someone's mind and thought process is by drawing them out first and having that dialogue. You will never change that, when you're chucking stones at them or fighting with them. So I think the other thing, looking at this Taliban situation, is that they have drawn out the Taliban, so to speak. So not everyone's out there in the open rather than, fighting from behind the scenes. And now it's that ample opportunity to transform them as well. And the other thing is that,
I was just going to say that, you're right, completely correct there. But I think one thing that we need to be balanced about is the fact that, it's very easy for people to just try to just label the Taliban as being some sort of sellouts and stuff like that. What we have to do is we have to think of them as being a pragmatic group, one who has certain goals, whether it's the removal of foreign forces, whether it's some sort of, whether it's, come to terms that it can't rule like it did before, but any Islamic rule is better than none, and so on. So I think that you're 100% correct, both of you guys are 100% correct, that they've been brought out, and the way Muddy explained and gave an example of all the other movements which ceased to be what they were before they came out, we just need to think about how, as Muslims, what we can do in regards to trying to generate this awareness and making sure that these guys don't go down that same route and fall into that same trap. You know what I'm trying to say? So I think there's an element of where we can try to raise the expectations of the Muslims on the ground on, okay, Taliban are there now. This is what's required of them. That we shouldn't expect any less. And then what happens is this then really would put a good pressure on people in that mindset to actually not be as pragmatic and try to go for a real change rather than taking a shortcut, which maybe they think that will work in Islam's benefit or in their benefit.
The other thing is, Taliban, they're not foreign. They are part of the Afghan people.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so they haven't been imposed on the Afghans from externally. They're actually from the population itself. I think one of the I can't remember the British one of the highest serving generals. I listened to a video, and he's saying that basically that the Taliban, they are the Afghan people, they are the Afghan boys, So I think
country boys.
if America had a choice, like it's done in Egypt and other Muslim countries, if they had a choice in Afghanistan, they would get rid of Taliban if they could. But in my opinion, is that they can't, because they are part of this society, the social fabric. So they have to, like you said, they have to be part of the government, as long as the secularists are in power sharing with them as well. Otherwise, they would have got rid of any remnants of Islam in any sort of governance, like they did in Egypt, in in some of the states in North Africa and Tunisia, for example. So, but at the same time, America, like I said, it does have these safety mechanisms in place if the sincere elements within Taliban don't play ball. So just to put a squeeze on them, like for example, America, I think recently stopped providing aid to Afghanistan. So there's some EU states as well, so they could switch off the financial tap and put more pressure on the Taliban if it's not playing ball.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's what Afi and Mudassar was saying as well. That this process where that they have, a future Afghanistan is impossible for Taliban to not have a future, because they are from the people. So what do? You over the years, like Rizzi was saying, you maybe take out certain hardcore elements from there. Then you have maybe a newer generation who's a bit more pragmatic, and then you get to a stage where you can have dialogue and 100% they don't have ultimate trust in these people, but nevertheless, they have measures, they have checks in place where if anyone is going to try to move away from what they've agreed, they can easily deal with them. And unfortunately, we've seen this happen to Al-Nahda, we've seen this happen to other movements who originally had popular support but were used in such a way that they were just removed, and no one really gave too was too worried about it other than their own followers and supporters. So I think some really good points there, brothers, to be honest with you. So I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, these are the event already kicked off yesterday, and that's why I want to get your initial or a day later thoughts anyway on what you thought was happening. And I think it is quite linked. I mean, from what I'm taking from what all of you guys are saying, is that there are points that have been brought up today, which were brought up last week when we did a podcast, and even a Instagram live that we did. And the reason why I mention that is because what it's showing is that what the objectives are in Afghanistan, this attack itself isn't just an isolated incident. It's all linked. It's all a game. It's all connected. So that's how we should see it. I mean, is there any final points, guys, you want to add before we sort of bring it to a close?
I think for me, it's firstly good discussion, man. I think I picked up a lot from it, and I think what it highlights is the uncertainty of Afghanistan and what is yet to come. And I think that the question of, the Taliban is, in terms of personnel, is definitely different to what it was back in the day. But I personally, this is my personal opinion, I think time will tell how pragmatic are they, and have they given in to, are there very strong elements in there who are just in it for personal gain, rather than those who actually have a genuine interest in what they believe to be applying Islam. And I think that is the danger for America, and that's why they need to make sure that, agreement or no agreement, that over time they can kill that notion of Islam being linked to ruling. And I think they appreciate that it's a long game. It's going to take years, possibly decades. But the way to do that is to weaken the position of the Taliban by having a unity government. And I think the other key point for me is, and this is mainly out to the Muslims, it's like what you mentioned earlier, and I touched on afterwards, was the success of, or the strength of, or the Islamicness, or the truth of the Taliban is not judged by the portrayal or the perception of what is ISIS and comparing them. The rules of Islam are clear. The role of the West and their enmity for Islam is clear, and we should be using these to judge Taliban and what it does, to say whether they're any good, not the fact that Taliban aren't an ISIS, so automatically they're a good group of people.
Yeah.
And just to add as well, I mean, like they say, actions speak louder than words. And normally one of the things what you need to kind of, understand is as Muslims, we should be politically aware as well. And when we do kind of explore issues and events, and obviously the circumstances surrounding those events and issues, such as the Kabul airport, we need to be mindful of, okay, what's happened in the past? What is the objectives of certain nations, such as America, who is the superpower of the world, and how does the Taliban and all these other surrounding countries and nations that are stakeholders within that situation, what's their role, and how are they impacted, and what does it mean for Islam and the Muslims? And also, as a politician and someone who I would recommend should be avidly following, news and, the statements of these leaders, to understand actually, what are their plans. You should be obviously, putting that concerted effort, reading and analysing events, and also their statements, so you can really understand what the situation is and not fall forward to this same trap again. Like Afi and yourself mentioned, we've been stung from the same hole many times before. And as a Muslim, and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is, a Muslim never gets stung from the same hole twice. So therefore, hence why it's imperative that we do really kind of start to formulate this framework which allows us to kind of see beyond the mist or through the mist.
Yeah, very important reminder, man. Very important reminder. I don't know if any of the other guys want to add anything before we end.
Yeah, just what Afi and what Muddy was saying, that the yardstick to gauge any opinion or measure anything is obviously our deen, Islam. And the only way you could do that is by reading, research, analyzing, questioning, because obviously the more information someone has, the more likely it is that that thought would be strong and most likely correct and accurate, rather than just following what's in the media superficially. And that's why the Muslims should be really politically aware and elevate their thinking and their political thinking as well.
Alhamdulillah. No, Jazakallah, man. I think if Rizzi does have a point.
I just like to say one point.
And if it's different to the last few points.
No, I just like to conclude, just say to this listeners, I mean, America is not threatened to have another type of a Saudi Arabia state in Afghanistan. That's not what it's threatened by. And nor does he leave over 100 billion worth of army and equipment for Muslims there. He always has objectives, so that's something to look out for.
Okay. Yeah, no, Jazakallah khair. Thanks, guys, for really, as it is sort of a last-minute request from my part to get you guys on here, get your thoughts. And I will be uploading this podcast to the Islamic Vibes podcast which is available on all popular podcast platforms and also available on the YouTube channel Path to Revival. And I want to also thank all the people who listened, and for those who actually contributed any comments and any questions. So guys, Jazakallah khair, and thank you very much, and hopefully I'll see you guys on the next one.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.